Dasgupta, who's the former ambassador and representative of India WTO, and Sunil Subramaniam, who's the market expert, joining us to weigh in on the meeting that has just concluded. Hi, good evening to both of you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us today.
Thank you.
I'll come to you first, Mr. Dasgupta. US is India's biggest trade partner, with whom we have a trade surplus of $45 billion, which has been in the crosshairs for Trump. And because India imposes such heavy tariffs on US, Trump wants a reciprocal tariff now. But after this meeting, the points that have really come out now, do you see this as a positive start? Because India-US trade, they are saying it will be doubled by, over $500 billion by 2030. What do you make of what has come out right now?
There are two aspects to this whole thing. One is the positive bit, which is that on defense procurement and co-production, sharing of technology, I think there has been some movement, and President Trump has indicated that he would be keen to go ahead down this road. On energy, I think it is a mixed signal, because the Americans have been asking us to completely distance ourselves from Russia for the oil supplies. And the US wants to substitute itself as the main supplier of oil and gas to India. And I think there has been some discussion on that. And we have promised the US to buy more oil and gas, because that is one good way of reducing the trade deficit that the US has now of about $45 billion in merchandise goods. So that is there, but it would be difficult for us to completely shut off Russia from our oil supplies. So that is the second aspect. The other thing is that specific discussions on tariffs have not taken place, but President Trump has asked his administration to come up with some guidelines so that reciprocal tariffs, as he says, can be imposed on all countries, with effect from the 1st of April. Now, President Trump has a rather simplistic view of things, that if for a product X, an exporting country is exporting to the US, and let's say it has a tariff of Y, but while it imports the same stuff from the US or from the rest of the world, it could have a tariff which is higher. So he wants to bring the two tariffs on a level, the same level. Now, as far as India is concerned, its exports of about $78 billion of merchandise goods, more than 75% of those products have 5% duty or less. Oil, gas, then diamonds, a whole host of other things, they're all below 5% tariff. So it's only 25% of the products that have a higher tariff, including garments and textiles, etc., of which the US is not a major exporter in any case. So, and in this budget, the union government has given the right indications. It has brought down the average tariff from about 13% to 11%, and including 2-3 items of interest to President Trump, because he had mentioned Harley-Davidson motorcycles and cars. So the tariffs for motorcycles having an engine of more than 1600 cc, right, the tariffs have been brought down. Right. So there has been some movement, and India has shown the flexibility or the inclination to accommodate some of President Trump's concerns. So we are hoping that these positive gestures, right, will enable us to, avoid the use of reciprocal tariffs against India, right, by President Trump.
Right. Mr. Dasgupta, you mentioned a point about, Russia being a major supplier of military equipments and jets to India. Now with US coming into the picture, how is that going to shape up India's trade relations with Russia going forward? I mean, of course, like you mentioned, we can't cut off Russia completely, but how is this going to impact India and Russia trade relationships? And then I'll come to you, Mr. Subramaniam, on the negatives of this meeting.
Well, for one thing, this $77.5 billion which we exported last year, and they exported about $42 billion or so. Now, that does not include defense procurement or defense purchases. So, that is all, not taken into account when calculating the merchandise trade deficit, etc. And as far as Russia is concerned, it has been a steady supplier for a very long time, and it has provided us with platforms which can be used, and co-production, very importantly. The Su-30, for instance, which is one of the mainstays of the Indian Air Force, that is co-produced in India. And so, and the Russians want to sell us Su-57, and the Americans want to sell us F-35, both of which were on show at the Aero India Air Show in Bengaluru 2-3 days ago. So it is a question of making the right choices based on merit, not getting swayed. But of course, we will have to make some concessions to geopolitics, and because the US is our largest trade partner. So from that perspective, we will have to make some small concessions, but we hope that our national security interest will not get compromised while making the defense deals.
Absolutely. Mr. Subramaniam, now let me just come to you now. The trade deficit in India's favor will be reduced. That's also a point that's coming out. What will it really mean for Indian companies, therefore? For example, India imposes up to 70% tariffs on US cars, and that makes it very difficult for, those cars to sell in India, especially Tesla. Now, if that is reduced, the move may benefit companies like I mentioned Tesla, but what does it mean for Indian companies like, say, Mahindra and Mahindra, Tata Motors, and so on?
So, first of all, yes, there will be a increased competitive element to the Indian automotive industry. And so that will mean that the margins will be more under pressure. But that being said, I think the quality of the American cars will be at a very much high range. So I think that's where, and if you see a lot of imported cars already sell in India, and they would compete within that, not at the mass market level that a Maruti Suzuki or a Mahindra does it. It will be more at the higher end. So I would say that to the extent it will be a more limited impact, but undoubtedly there will be an impact. And overall, the fact that we are going to be reducing tariffs means that Indian industry has to become more competitive, right? If they are to compete then, because the support of tariffs will not be there. So those companies which are able to quickly improve productivity can benefit, but those which lag behind will get hurt. So clearly there will be a separation of the men from the boys in the Indian land. Those who are so far surviving on a tariff protection will need to up their productivity, whether through use of AI, robotics, or all higher skill level labor. The third aspect, which you said from the negative perspective, is will be shifting some of our oil purchases, which used to buy from the Middle East and from Russia to America. The key thing is the price of the oil, right? So we used to drive a very good bargain with Russia because of the sanctions. They were selling it cheap to us. Now with US in an open market scenario, right, I would say that maybe the price of oil may go up for us. But a counter to that is that Mr. Trump would not want oil prices to rise for US consumers. And I don't think he can maintain a differential price for domestically sold gas and exported gas. So if oil prices are going to trend down because of the increased supply by reviving the wealth, so Mr. Trump's drill baby drill as a phrase comes to mind. So if he's going to increase the supply, then oil prices should come down. Then that won't be so. We have to wait and watch these interesting scenarios as they play out.
Mrs. Subramaniam, a point well made about the oil part, where where we are buying cheaper oil from Russia because of the various sanctions, and now the oil could get more expensive. Come US into the picture. And speaking of which, so then what are the sectors that are likely to get impacted as far as Indian companies are concerned? Of course, the ones that are related to oil. Besides that, there was also a mention by Trump on imposing 25% tariff on steel and aluminium companies and pharma companies. Again, a lot of Indian Indian pharma companies have a big market in the US because we are selling cheaper drugs, and now with the the tariffs coming in on the pharma companies as well, what are the sectors that are likely to get impacted?
See, I would say that it's not all negative because you see, China is the biggest exporter of pharmaceuticals to the US, and tariffs on China are going to be far higher than on India, right? So while we may lose some in terms of margins, we could make it up by volumes by getting a shift from the Chinese to the Indian thing. So I think that you can't just say that just because those tariffs are coming, their margins will go down, the volumes could make up for it. So if you're going to study this company by company to see how they are responding to this. The second is that in China, India, we could come into an agreement where part of the production happens in China, then shifted to India. Again, those differential tariffs could work in our favor. It's very hard to see the oil prices, like I said, right? While it on surface looks like we won't get cheap oil from Russia, because I believe Mr. Trump will drive oil prices down, and he's already talking to Saudi Arabia to increase their production to bring down oil. So I think that if oil eases, then a whole host of industries, like even if the Brent crude price goes down from 75 to 65, is a whole sort of downstream industries, right from paints to tires to everything will benefit. So one can't just say that this is all going to be negative. I think the volume increase and everything else based on how this, if we are going to double to $500 billion, then clearly a lot of Indian export companies are going to be also benefiting. So in turn for the buying oil, which we don't currently buy from US, if we are going to be able to export more stuff, that will still benefit. So I think it's very hard until the nitty-gritty and the fine print comes out of all of these decisions, right, to really see. In fact, I see that the supply of nuclear equipment probably a huge positive for that sector in India in terms of manufacturing. So that's again a very positive which come of this. And when they come to defense, also most likely there will be a localization of the defense. So there could be a 70-30 where the American things are brought in here and then assembled in India, which could lead to job creation around the finishing product. So that 30% local manufacturing thing could come to our aid. So all of this could even be a big boost to the PLI scheme. So I would say that overall for the economy, this whole meeting between Modi and Trump in the long run is very good. It politically gets it closer to America. It's good because the Quad arrangement between Australia, Japan, India is a counter to China, and India plays an important role. So Mr. Trump definitely will have a soft corner towards us from a political perspective. So I think overall the visit has been very positive for the broad Indian economy, the GDP growth. Individual sectors, like there will be some winners and some losers, and only time will tell how they play out that piece.
Right, Mr. Subramaniam. Coming to you, Mr. Dasgupta, then, few days back, what really spooked the global markets and, AI companies all over was the Chinese DeepSeek. Now, after which India was also determined to develop its own AI model with India's ambitious 1,500 crore AI mission. Now, US and India are now likely to be joining forces to develop AI technologies post this meeting. That's what has come out. How will this democratize AI and also reduce dependence on, one AI superpower?
Well, as far as AI is concerned, the US is number one, China is number two, and the UK is number three. And we had recently had a meeting in Paris on AI. And I think 50 odd countries signed that agreement. It was a preliminary kind of an agreement, curtain raiser sort of a thing. So as to build trust and to, try to develop some guidelines so that AI is used in a manner which does not exploit unwitting users. Now, the US and the UK, interestingly, did not sign that agreement. And Vice President Ed Vance was in Paris for that reason to attend that meeting. And Prime Minister Modi met him at President Macron's dinner. So AI, I think there will be cooperation because the US and India are natural allies. And we have to, of course, develop AI in a cooperative manner. But China also has to be taken on board, because if China goes ahead and does things in a manner that the moral aspect of the use of AI is neglected or ignored, then I think it will be a great danger to the rest of the world. So China necessarily has to be part of the group, and there aren't too many nations which will be developing AI. So India looks forward to working together with the US in developing AI and making it as user friendly as possible, and to shut out the problems that AI could cause by immoral use.
On that note, Mr. Dasgupta and Mr. Subramaniam, thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us today.